Welcome back, guys. This video covers the credit card transactions tab, and since its contents and how to use it is almost identical to the banking transaction tab that I explained in the previous video, I'm only going to cover the differences with the bank transactions tab, as well as how to enter a transaction that reflects credit card payment, how to deal with supplementary cards or credit cards that you haven't been able to define because we only track four or up to four credit cards, as well as how to deal with payments for credit cards that are going to happen next year, even though the transaction actually happens this year. So let's get started with covering the credit card transactions. So the first thing to understand about a credit card transaction is that it isn't money that comes out of your banking account right away like a debit card payment, right? Payment will happen when you proceed to pay your credit card balance, or part of it at least, and that is when the money comes out of your banking account. The next thing to understand is the difference between the date of the credit card transaction and the date the transaction was posted. So to illustrate that, let's take a look at this example here that I just dragged into the screen. So notice a couple of things. This is an example of an actual transaction or a credit card transaction. And notice that there are two dates in this example here. The top date here, October 23rd, is the date of the credit card transaction, which is the day the purchase was made. Right, so it's today I actually took out the credit card and made the purchase. This bottom date is the date the transaction is posted to your credit card account. So all credit cards have got this notion, the notion of when you made the transaction or the purchase and when it was actually posted. Sometimes these two dates are the same, but most times the posted date is a few days later, right? So that's just time that is taken by the credit card company to actually verify the transaction, make sure it's valid, and then post it. So that is the posted date. And so understanding the proper date to use when entering your transactions will determine which payment month will be assigned to a transaction in this worksheet. And the payment month column and the way it works is the main difference with the banking transactions tab when entering a transaction. So let me just move this back out of the screen here. There are a couple of other differences from the banking transactions, mainly two. First of all, cells C1 up here is a drop-down list that allows you to select which credit card you want to see the balance owing. So if I click on this drop down here, I can either see the balance owing for my Visa, my Amex, my MasterCard, Costco card, a Canadian Tire card, or the other option that I've named other, which usually or that you use for all of your other credit cards that have not had any defined entries created in the credit card accounts. And that's the way we'll see a little bit later to capture credit card transactions that are for other credit cards. We'll see that, like I said, a little bit later in the video. So picking this value here, this entry here will tell us the balance owing for that particular credit card. And we'll get into that a little bit later. And when you pick that value in cell C1, then the amount that's shown here in cells H1 and H2 is the balance owing for that selected credit card as of the end in balance date, which is always the today date by default. Also, the notion of selecting which credit card to see the balance owing for is actually brought forward under column I right here, where for each one of the transactions, you've got a drop-down list where you pick which credit card is associated for that particular transaction, right? So when you enter a transaction, you need to tell it which it was for which credit card. And we'll get to that when we start doing the examples of capturing transactions. So the best way to show you The small differences between the credit card transactions tab and the banking transactions tab is to actually go ahead and use a few examples. So to illustrate the whole concept of the payment month column, let's go back to the credit card accounts tab to see which credit cards have been defined and as well as their statement periods. So here at the top, I can see first one that I've got is the Visa card and the statement periods section where you've got a begin date for the first period that starts in December of last year on the 11th and then ends a month later, which is on the 10th of January in this year, and so on and so forth for the rest of the months. And for each one in column E, we have indicated in which month that particular credit card balance is going to be paid. So when you get to after January 10th and you log into your credit card website, you'll see that a statement will be created for the period with the begin date to the end date. And it will show you that you've got, in this case, 21 days to pay it, which gets me to the end of the month of January. But more importantly, it tells us that all transactions that you enter that have got a date that falls between December 11th and January 10th will have a payment month assigned to it of January, because that's when you're actually going to pay it and therefore come out of your account. And that kind of sort of goes to what we call keeping track of your cash flow, which is just a fancy term for describing when money comes into your bank account and when it goes out. So this spreadsheet tracks your cash flow, and therefore knowing what the payment month is going to be for those transactions will actually allow it to track that for your credit cards and compile that along with your banking transactions. So let's illustrate this concept of payment month with an actual transaction on using, for example, February 10th. So if I take a look at row number 9 here, you've got on line 9, as I said, you've got the period which is from February 11th to March 10th. So a transaction on February 12th should show up as a payment month in March. So let's go to the credit card transactions tab and let's pick this first row here. And let's just do a couple of things. So first of all, let's check here in column I that we are talking about the Visa card, which was the card we were looking at in the credit card accounts tab. And so that's what we've got. We've got Visa here picked for the credit card. And let's put in February 10th or 12th, sorry. So if I hit enter, you can see that even though my transaction is on February 12th, so that would be the posted transaction as I would see on the credit card website, and for that particular date, because of the way we set it up in the credit card accounts and the payment period, we see that that would actually be paid for in the month of March. And that's why here the payment month changed to March. And to show how that works also based on which credit card you're using, if I go here to the last column and change that to, let's say, I don't know, the MasterCard Costco, doing so will take a look at the credit card account for Costco, right? And it will look at the February date. And so February 12th falls within this January 25th to February 24th with a payment month of March. And that's why it stayed at March, right? If I pick another one and let's go to this time the Amex, well, Amex in this case, if we go back to the credit card accounts and take a look at Amex, which is this guy here, and I take a look at when would that happen, that falls within this range here. And at that range, it says February is your payment month. And so that's why it changed it to February. So that's the whole concept of the payment month, and that is the main difference with the banking transactions tab. The banking transactions tab just takes a look at your date and it puts it immediately in the corresponding month, Whereas here we put it in the corresponding payment month. So if I go back now to here and I say that's a Visa transaction, it'll switch it back to the month of March. Okay, so because I want to show how to make a credit card payment later in this video, let's just change this date here and let's put it to October 17th. And in doing so, you can see that the payment month is going to be November. So as an example here, the descriptions, let's just say I went to Staples and it cost me, I don't know, $100 at Staples. From the category, I'm going to pick education and work. For the subcategory, I am going to pick supplies, for example. And so to see how this amount got accounted for in the reports, let's go to the summary tab. And let's go here. And in cell C2 up here, I've already got it selected, but if you hadn't had that already, you would go here and go, okay, I want to take a look at how things look like in October. And so now you've got a calculation. And if I go to the education and work for the month of October and I take a look at the totals in terms of expenses, I can see that there is no amount there. There's no total yet for education and work in cell C12. There is, however, a budget, and that's because in the budget sheet, if I go over here, you can see that for the month of October, I have a budget amount for education and work that has been specified in this case for the bus pass, but it rolls up to the total for education and work to $100, and that's what carries across here, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing this $100 budget there. Now, if I were to come up here and say, okay, take a look at November, now you can see that $100 show up, which is what's going on here in your credit cards because the payment month is November for $100, and that's why the summary is showing this as being $100 for the month of November. And so to further illustrate the payment month and its effects on the summary, if I were to come back here to the credit card transactions and change that to October 10th, which is the last day of the statement period for the Visa, which is the 10th of the month, it switched back to October. And so now if I come back to my summary, the $100 here has now disappeared for November. And if I go back to October, you can see that it's back displayed here in the October timeframe. Okay, so I'm thinking that you've now gotten the point about the payment month and how that works with the credit cards, and that being the difference with how it works with the banking transactions. So let's go ahead now and enter a transaction for a different credit card just to show you how that works. Right? So I go here and let's say I went to Costco and I bought some food as well as some Christmas decorations. So October 27th, let's say, is the day the transaction was posted. And now it's showing November, but that's because it's for the Visa card. So if I go here now and I change that and I say, actually, it's for my MasterCard Costco, you can see that it changed the payment month for December this time around. And I'm going to put in as a description just Costco. And let's say that it cost me $350. And I go here, and that's for my groceries. And let's say it's for food. But remember, I also said that I bought Christmas decorations. So that's another example of a multi-item transaction. So we're going to put the second part of it, which is still here for October 27th. Go back here and change that also to MasterCard Costco. I'm going to copy this line. And let's say the food portion was, I don't know, just $35. Now we know that from the previous video that these two together is more than total of your bill. So the way to adjust that is to come up here, put an equal sign, minus the 35, and now the two together are totaling $350, and you get the correct amount, which was for the groceries, and the correct amount, which was for the Christmas gifts. And so I can do like I was showing you in the previous video, which is to highlight the items for a multi-item just so that you can see it in the or recognize them in the worksheet. And in this case here, I'm going to go down to house and I'm going to pick that it was for decorations. There you go. Okay. And so now I've gotten another transaction written in and for a different credit card, right? So the key thing here is to always remember in the last column to tell it which credit card this transaction is associated with. And that's all there is to it in terms of entering transactions. And that really is the main difference with the banking transactions. Now let's look at the whole concept of balance owing for each card. Right now, I've got up here on cell C1, I've got Visa. And so for my Visa card, it's telling me that my balance owing is $200, which makes sense because my opening balance, if you recall from previous videos, was $100. And I came in here and I did one transaction for Visa for $100, and now my balance owing is $200. However, if I go up here and I say I want to see it for now for my MasterCard Costco, I can see that it's now $450. And that's because the opening balance for my MasterCard was also $100. And I've added in a transaction for $350. Right? And so that's how the balance owing works. All you have to do is select the card of interest, and it will give you the balance owing for that particular card. And that's it in terms of entering transactions and understanding the balance owing and how that works, as well as the payment month. This section of the video is to address supplementary cards. So you may be saying, yeah, Dave, you can track up to 4 cards, but what happens if I actually use more credit cards than that, which is it's common. And so I'm going to explain how to deal with that. And while I plan on updating the spreadsheet to support many more cards in the next version, for the time being, let's take a look at how to enter transactions for credit cards that are not listed in your credit card accounts tab. So if we go back to that credit card accounts tab right here, you're going to see that I have entries for the Visa, the Amex card, a MasterCard Costco card, as well as a Canadian Tire card. But suppose I also have another card from a specialty stores, like say the Bay, right? I don't use it often, but that's not the point. The point is when I do use it, I need to be able to capture the transaction, even though I don't have a credit card defined for it. It's not a big thing, and it's actually quite simple. So what you do is you go to your credit card transactions tab, and you enter your posting date. So let's say the posting date, again, is today, October 30th. Right now it enters November because it's thinking that it's for a Visa card. What you do is you continue, go ahead and enter a description, and I suggest something that will allow you to notice or be able to see that it's from another credit card. So let's just say I enter other credit card, and let's say it's the Bay, right? And enter your transaction. So let's say $150. And in this case for the Bay, I don't know, I'm going to say it's for house purposes, and again, it's for decorations, right? So I bought something at the Bay, which is a decoration. Okay, I can go ahead and put a note, but more importantly, let's go over here to column I, and this time around, what we're going to do is we're going to go hit the drop-down list, and we're going to say it is actually other. Okay, now the minute I selected other, notice that here under the payment month column, it switched that back to NA, and that's normal because nothing's been defined in terms of payment periods for the credit card called other. And so it doesn't know what payment month it should be. And all you need to do is to go ahead and tell it which month you plan on paying for that transaction. In other words, paying the credit card amount. So let's say here, I'm going to tell it that I'm actually going to be paying this in the month of November. So I select November, and there we go. I now have a payment month. It's been categorized with a category and a subcategory, and therefore it's going to show up in the calculations in the rest of the spreadsheet. And there's no more to it than that. Pretty simple. That's it. You don't need to do anything more than that. One last thing that I wanted to add in as the final section to this video is how to deal with transactions that are towards the end of the year, and that because of the payment period, you get yourself into a situation where you do the transaction in this year, but the payment will happen in next year, and how to deal with that. And that's what I call a next year payment month. So that's a bit of a special case. And so, for example, if we take a look at the Visa card that I've got in this sample spreadsheet, any posted transactions after December 11th of the current year, so 2020, will become purchases that are actually going to be paid for in January 2021, which is, of course, next year. And so the same will happen, for example, as of December 25th for the sample Costco card. So, for example, if you try entering those dates, so let's say December 11th, you're going to see that the payment month is next year, and it doesn't go to gray, it stays in yellow. And if I enter December 25th, and over here I change the credit card instead of Visa, I say it's an Amex, it's still going to say next year. So those two cards here are, for those dates, are going to be next year payments. And when that happens, none of the transaction amounts that you enter that have this next year for the payment month, none of those will show up in the reports. As the term suggests, they are next year amounts. So you can go ahead and continue to enter those transactions to the end of the current year. That way, the transactions will have been captured in this spreadsheet here. And what it means is that when you start the next year with an empty copy of the spreadsheet template, you can copy the transactions that have the next year as the payment month from this spreadsheet to the new spreadsheet for next year. And that's all you need to do for these next year payment month transactions. And that is also it for the credit card transactions tab. See you in the next video.